All right, so last video on our little game. Again, it's meant to be a perfect game, but hopefully we'll have all the stuff that we need to make something more creative and cool. So what I'm going to do in this one is, the last part is doing some persistent high scores. Right now, if you recall, from last video, we have our high score looking like this. We'll keep track in between games of like the high score. There's actually two issues. One issue is that this does not persist from, like if I restart my game and I do my high score, it was 1.7. It's not going to keep track of that. It's just like how while the game is being run. I also realized that I have an issue in my game just from a gameplay standpoint of I should really be keeping track of the low score, not the high score, because to win at my game means to get it done quicker. So I should probably change that. So let's take a look and yeah, so let's do some file reading and writing, and then maybe I'll change the score at the end as a little bonus thing. All right, but let's start. So we're going to do some file reading. Oh, I think what we should start out with is I'm going to make a text file in the root directory, which means like the base folder of my project. In this case, it just basically means don't be in any one of these VS Code, bin, lib, or src folders. I'm going to click I can click readme, that's in the base part in the root. I can click file, and then I'm going to make a document called highscore.txt. Highscore.txt is going to have a value of 0 to begin with. I'm going to hit save, close that file, and I should have my high score there kind of stored away for me. Let's take a look. I'm going to go into our little code blocks, and I'm going to look at 15 file reading, and we're saying reading from a file, and I want to take this block of code. So let's take that, and let's go back into our text file, or excuse me, into our game. And let's see, we are going to put that in setup. What I want to do is I want to run some file reading. I want to read from my text file and figure out what my previous high score was, and then set my current high score based on that. Now this is pretty gross. I do not love that there's this big giant block of code in the middle of my setup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that out, and I'm going to make a method called read high score. Because then if I need to go find this, one, just makes it not look so gross. Two, makes it so that if I have to go back and if I have to debug or something, I can find it really easy. I'm just going to look for my what's called read high score method. And we'll throw all this code in there, nicely kind of blocked away. I'm going to do my scanner, and here I don't need to have file. I don't need to have a string either. We did that a lot in some of our exercises. Mine's just called high score. I'm just going to code that in there. If you do multiple file, I don't know, maybe you could do some cool stuff with different files that you're reading, but I'm not doing that for this. I highly encourage you to do something more creative than what I'm doing. I'm just trying to show you the skills. All right, so while this thing has another line, technically we probably don't need this while loop because we are just reading a single line from it, so we don't need to read multiple lines. I'll leave that in there, though, for the sake of consistency. Let's see, I'm going to say string row. I'm going to extract this, same as I've always done. I don't want to print it. What I actually want to do is I want to save this as my high score. Whatever's in row should be stored. The value stored in that row should update my high score variable. So I'm going to say high score is equal to row. Now I can't say row directly because row is a string and high score is a double. So what I need to do in here is I need to use double.value of row. This might look different for your game if you're pulling out an integer, or maybe you are pulling out text, depending on what you're doing. This might look a little bit different. Mine is a double. I know that I need to pull out a double from that. So let's see how this would look. Let's go into our high score. We can prove to ourselves that this is running by saying, let's put in our high score of like 25. We'll run our code. Always good to run our code just to make sure it's doing what we expect. Hit space, and we can see the high score is 25. Space. Okay, so we have file reading working out there. The next thing we need to do is file writing. So we should save our score. If we get a high score, we should save it to the file at an appropriate time. I think where students sometimes go wrong with this is they think, oh, I should put this in draw, and it should be in like the main part of my draw where it's constantly running and we're constantly checking to see if we have we're constantly like kind of writing our high score to the file, but that's really a waste of memory. We should only be doing it. We should be doing it as infrequently as possible, and really only doing it like in the moment that it's necessary. There are probably a few different times when we could see that happening. I'm trying to think of where the best place is. Let's write our code first, and then we'll go through and see if we can find the best place to put it. It might be right here when our array list has a size of 0 and we're going to change scenes. That could be a good spot for it. And it's running a lot, and maybe there'll be better spots for it. But let's see. We're gonna say public void save high score, or we call it write high score if you want to be consistent with the naming of this method. But I'm gonna call it save high score. If we want to do save high score, what we need to do is look into our docs. We're gonna find our writing to a file thing from this folder, from our project folder, and we're gonna take this big block of code. Let's take this and let's put it into our code. We're gonna put that right here. And then format document. Let's see, I don't need this. I don't need either one of these things. I know that the name of my file location is going to be highscore.txt. Basically, I'm only running this code when I know that I have a high score, so I don't need to do any checking to see if my high score is, or like if my current score is bigger than the high score. Yeah, we're just going to run this only once, and that's when we have a high score to record, or when, or yeah. And I'll get rid of that. I'll leave this in here in case we get any kind of errors, although I don't think we should. And let's see this. Let's go into 0. Let's see if this is working appropriately. When I run this, if I click here, oh, actually, you know what? Let me set my high score just for testing purposes. Let's say this is going to be 1.8 to begin with. We're going to run the program. We're going to hit space. We should see that our high score is 1.8 from the file. Hit space to go back into the game. 2.6. We should see high scores 2.6 here. Now, if this is working correctly, fingers crossed, we should go back into here, and when we hit space, oh, 1.8. Wasn't it higher? Wasn't it 2.6? High score is 2.8. Let's. Oh, I'm so. I didn't actually write the code. I didn't actually run the code. I did all this like reading and writing, but I didn't actually save it. Oh gosh. Oh boy. What am I doing? Let's do save high score. I'm going to put this here, and I want to think about it, see if I can find a better place to put it. My goodness, what am I doing? Space. High score is 1.8. Space. Let's get it to 2. High score is good there. Let's close it. Let's rerun it. Practice it. Should be 2.5. Let's see if we can get up to, let's say, 3 something. Space. It's at 3.6. Let's close. Let's reopen. We should see our high score is 3.6. Great, so we've been successful at that. Oof, finally. All right, so I think that marks the end of this video for most of you. If you want to take a look, I might go through and think about how we can make this a little bit better. My concern, oh, this should actually be okay. Yeah, actually, I think this is a good spot for it. I want to make sure it doesn't get run like a million times. But I think it's only going to get run if scene is 0. Right, and yeah. So I think this should only get run once, because it's only getting run when we're in the gameplay screen. We're going to set this, we're going to change the scene right afterwards. So this one, yeah, I was a little bit worried that it might be running behind the scenes while we're in our like end of game scenario, but I think we're actually good with it right there. Other things I'm going to change in here, I want to make sure that, I do want to update my high score. I want to say like what, I think I should just say like this. If high score is greater than the timer, because that's like, our high score should be, yeah, our high score should be the lower of the 2 values. Yeah, we should do that. That does mean that I shouldn't initialize this to be 0. I could maybe do something different. I could just do an arbitrarily large value, but that's kind of weak. I think I could do better than that. Yeah, I'd have to think through how I could do that. I'm gonna stop that there. There's probably a better way. Let me see if I can think of something. All right, so what I thought of here is that like I don't necessarily need to be doing read high score at the beginning of setup. I think that's really the issue. What I should do is like, I could say that here, check this, read high score, and then it could say if high score is equal to 0, like if there's no value in there, because that's what it'd be, kind of by default, it would be 0. If high score is 0, then high score is equal to timer. Yeah, actually, I could probably just put that in here, right? If high score is 0, means there was no recorded high score, or the high score is greater than the timer, then we should update that. Ooh, I think that would work. And I think in that case, then we could delete this. We can make this 0, or even, I think, leave it empty. Let's try that out. Run this. Yeah, it's going to say high score is 1.2. 0.7. Yeah, so that will be a fix. I can just show you like this would not have worked. Oh, let me go forward with this. Let me just double check my work here. I want it to be the lower value, so but it's persisting with a high score now. This really only matters on the very first run of your code, so it probably isn't like that big of a deal. But 0.7, okay, that should be good. 0.1, that's good. Okay, yeah, it's looking good. Let me just show you what would have happened. The issue that I was thinking about was that if we went back to this, we did read high score. If I had this as like 0, and I didn't like have any value in there. Again, I could put an arbitrarily high value in there, but it's just like, that's not great. There's got to be a better way. It would persistently say that my high score is 0 because like there's nothing stored in there, so it'll assume the high score is 0, and we'll never be able to beat it no matter what we do. Okay, so that little fix there, I think that's a pretty good solution to this. Read the high score. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any other way. There's always ways to convert. I'm going to stop right there.